Hey there and welcome back to another Rise of the Guardians video. And recently, I've been talking through the backstories for a number of the different characters from Rise of the Guardians, and lamenting that we will never get to see this stuff play out on screen in the future. I started off with Pitch Black and his very deep and rich backstory, followed up with Santa's story as a swashbuckling adventurer turned helpful toy maker, and then continued most recently with the story of the Easter Bunny, who's a character that was wholly unrecognisable in his prequel book compared to the character we got on screen. And I will just briefly mention, I'm not trying to bash the movie. I'm just talking through what could have been. What content we could have seen released had the original film succeeded at the box office. The stories that we could have seen play out on screen, and that we'll likely never get to see at this point. And so with that being said, today we'll follow up with the story of Toothiana, aka the Tooth Fairy. So Toothiana, or the Tooth Fairy, is the guardian of memory who collects the baby teeth of children all around the world, as the teeth hold their memories, and leaves behind some cold hard cash. Man, that gets me nostalgic. Anyway, she keeps the teeth in her palace in Myanmar, and when a person really needs to remember something important, when they've lost their way or lost themselves, she helps them remember using the teeth. And of all the characters in the Rise of the Guardians film, Toothiana's probably the one that's the least developed of all the main characters, excluding Sandman. But that guy doesn't even speak and he's dead for half the movie, so it's harder to make him count. But next to him, she's the least developed. Jack's the protagonist, so clearly he'll get the most time, the most development. Santa slots into the mentor role, and Bunny into the rival position. Jamie is, well, he's the audience stand-in, the key character they all have to protect and cherish, so he gets a lot of time. And then Pitch Black's the antagonist, so obviously he's going to get a lot of narrative focus as well. But Toothiana, she doesn't really get that much focus beyond the first act of the film. She's like a pseudo-romantic interest for Jack Frost at first, or at least as much of a romantic interest as you can realistically get in this kind of movie. I mean, she flirts with him and pines after him, and that's it. Good enough, I suppose. And then later on, she gives a little bit of exposition about how teeth are important and hold the memories of childhood. And after that, she's just kinda there. The rest of the film sort of involves her, but she's far more of a bystander. Things happen to her and she reacts. There's no arc. There's no growth or character development. She's left as a bit of a blank slate in comparison to a lot of the other characters. Somebody you could realistically build sequels or prequels around, as she can be taken in so many different directions due to the lack of focus the film put on developing her character. She's basically a treasure trove of hidden potential. And so, once again, an obligatory, it is a crime against humanity that this franchise hit the proverbial brick wall. I mean, bring it back for a series on Netflix DreamWorks. Do it! Because much like Pitch Black, much like The Man in the Moon, or Santa, or the Easter Bunny before her, she has a deeply rich backstory that fleshes out her character and would have made for such a good storyline. And so today, let's walk through it. And just bearing in mind, this comes from the book series, so if you want the non-summarized version, buy it and read it. They're very easy to read, and they capture a lot of the Rise of the Guardians goodness that you get in the film. So it's not like it's going to feel janky or like completely different characters. So if you can, try to support the author. But anyway, with that being said, let's delve into the backstory. So Toothiana actually has one of the cooler backstories of all the Guardians we've talked about so far. Whilst North was an outlaw, and Easter Bunny is a mystical space rabbit, Toothiana's story is a little bit different. I mean, a big chunk of her important story, her important backstory, occurs before she's even born, as we follow the lives of her parents. Her father, Haroom, was a slave and friend to a local Maharaja whose favourite pastime was to hunt and kill rare and exotic animals. You know, as you do when you're a rich king. Over their years spent together, the pair were able to hunt and kill every exotic beast there is, all except one. Flying elephants that lived in the palace of the Sisters of Flight, which is normally inaccessible to humans, as you need to be able to fly. Unable to reach it by normal means, and unsure where it is to begin with, the Maharaja decides to collect the teeth of all the children in his kingdom, as they have some hidden memory that will allow him to power a machine that will somehow take him to the palace. Yeah, this part's a little bit convoluted, but meh. Anyway, they get up to the palace, and the Maharaja decides it's time to massacre everybody, but Haroom gets in the way to try and stop him, and is mortally wounded. And one of the Sisters of Flight decides she's actually quite attracted to this selfless slave and saves him. And then they get married and they have a baby. And who is that baby? Why, it's Toothiana. Oh, and the Maharaja is actually turned into a monkey as well and told to get lost and that he needs to repent his wicked ways. Yeah, fair enough. The new family goes to live in a local village for a few years until Toothiana grows some wings as she begins to get older. And understandably, in my opinion, the villagers panic. I think I would also panic if a child I lived near for many years suddenly sprouted wings. I mean, I wouldn't try to murder them relentlessly like the villagers end up trying to do in this story because, well, I don't think that's a very neighbourly thing to do, but maybe that's just me. But anyway, the villagers go nuts, and eventually, a mysterious hunter murders her parents and takes her hostage, revealing himself to be the Monkey King, aka the Maharaja that they definitely should have killed earlier, but didn't because people are too nice. Too much mercy in this story. But long story short, he's defeated, and at the cost of the lives of the remaining Sisters of Flight, and then Toothiana lets him go again, and her allies beat his ass, but he survives to fight another day. This dude is one of those characters that would just make so much more sense to kill him. Why don't they? Ugh. But sure, why not? Let's keep him alive so he can inevitably betray you again and try to end your life. Because, well, that isn't something he'd do at all, right? Surely this evil and selfish monkey man has learned his lesson now that you've completely let him get away with murdering your parents and basically making a whole race of creatures go extinct. This couldn't possibly go wrong, could it? Well, yeah, it turns out it can, because when we hit the main timeline of the book, picking up where the Easter Bunny book left, Old Mate Monkey joins up with Pitch Black for some more shenanigans. Whoopsie. And yeah, from here the book plays out much like the others. Brief adventure, fight Pitch, yada yada yada. You know the drill. I'm not going to get too much into it. Buy the books, they're good. But moving on, once again, this story, just the backstory before we even get to the main stuff, this is premium prequel bait. And honestly, it feels like the best backstory yet. Perfect mix between the strange, whimsical nature of the franchise and a new added brutality that was infused into her story in particular. And for a character that was largely passed over during the course of the film, in favour of developing some of the other characters, it's a shame we're not going to be seeing this play out anytime soon. And so, before we end the video, I will once again say, they either need to reboot the franchise or make a Netflix original series that follows the storylines of these books. I guarantee that an on-demand, animated streaming series would do so well. But I guess we'll just have to hope. But that being said, these were just my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of Toothiana and her backstory? Do you wish we could see it play out on screen? Or maybe you aren't a fan? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.